human behavior. And with that, we find ourselves in another Kaupen Daily Yap over here. We'll talk for 10 minutes about random topics without any editing, and after 10 minutes, I just cut it off. So when I talk about human behavior, what I want to talk about today is probably a little bit of higher level concept. I'm going to sound very strange and I'm going to sound very weird. I sort of want us to take a look at a set of human behaviors, societally speaking, and I want us to sort of examine them through the lens of, let's say, an alien that doesn't understand them, just for the sake of argument, and just sort of lay out what we find. And maybe that's going to be interesting, or maybe it's not going to be interesting. I don't know. I just came up with that idea, and let's see. This goes back to the wedding I was not too recently ago. And there I really thought about this because, so we were sitting and basically the officiant, I think is what he's called, was, talking about the groom and the bride, and we're talking about like, oh, this is how you met, and those were the challenges, and sometimes marriage, oh, it can be quite hard. And he was a little bit too negative about marriage in my opinion, but okay, fair enough. Regardless though, it was a fine speech. And you had the bride coming in with her father, and the father was definitely moved, and it was first of all, it was a nice wedding regardless, and it was a nice party afterwards and all of that. But also, it was just interesting because there were people from all sorts of places, right, coming over here to basically witness this. And that was also what he said, right? It's like, oh, you're here to witness, like, not only the bridesmaids and the man of honor and things like that were there to witness this, but also everyone else was there to witness the wedding. And I just found it absolutely fascinating, if you once again look at it from like higher up, that we have these sort of rituals and we have these sort of traditions. And I'm not judging them for either being good or bad right now. I'm literally just looking at them, finding them fascinating, that we engage in these things. And the pastor, it wasn't a pastor, it was the officiant, was talking about like love and how this is, and how they found it, and the struggles within it, and the struggles within a partnership, and the struggles within marriage. And it was very moving as well. And I don't know, it was just a very, very interesting thing to see. Then afterwards, before we had the buffet was opened, obviously the father of the bride and the father of the groom were both also having a little bit of a speech, also both great speeches. And luckily neither of them was built too close to water, because I genuinely, like, if there's an older man that's like starting to break down, that is, I'm done. At that point, I'm also built too close to the water in that instance, because that just always gets me. Anyway, especially, let's say, for something positive, right? Because like positive tears are tears that are never shed in vain, basically. And I love that. Those are always great. Regardless, though, that was great speeches, both of them as well, and also appealing to this just fascinating cosmos where you had these like 100-odd people from all over who had their own families and their own histories, and we had this like shared moment of this wedding. And we can extend this to, why do we celebrate our birthdays, right? We can say, well, it's like, it's another year passing. It's like, okay, but when we usually talk about passing time, that's usually a bad thing, right? Specifically when you talk to old people, you're like, oh, you won't believe how fast your time goes, right? And be careful with it. And it's like, oh, I'm actually quite aware of it, and you should be aware of it too, right? Time passes quite quickly, but yet we celebrate this. And obviously these traditions and these celebrations, what are they there for? Maybe they are there for just to spend time with, basically the people you love, right? Basically with the people who are important to you in one capacity or another, right? Going back to the different types of love, right? Well, from the ancient Greeks, where it's like, well, you want to spend a lot of time with all of them, right? With all of these with people who express each type of love towards you and towards them. And that is I find that interesting. I don't know. That's the best that I have. Like I said, this is sort of thinking on my toes right now. I have just been. It just came to me as a thought experiment, because as I was sitting there, I was also thinking about that as like a higher level concept, where it's just like, it's just so strange, but it is beautifully strange, right? It is beautifully strange. It is beautifully weird that these that we have these things, and that we do these things, and that we engage in this, and that we extend this further, right? We drink alcohol. And it's like, there apparently, we actually talked about this, funnily enough, during the wedding as well. There is no, or I talked about this with one person, there is no safe level of alcohol consumption, apparently, right? Like, the first drop of alcohol is actually already going to be bad for you long term. Now, is this actually the case? I mean, at this point, it's hard to say, right? I knew, like, my grandma she is still drinking in her, like, late 80s, and she is doing absolutely amazingly, right? So who knows, right? Who knows? And she was just recently, like, checked. So it's interesting. At other times, right, you have someone who smokes one cigarette, bam, done, right? And it's interesting. This is maybe even goes back to the unfairness of the world that we talked about in a couple of daily yaps ago, where I said the world can be unfair. Well, what are you going to do about it? And where it is just the case that everything is a choice, and choices have, well, trade-offs, right? There isn't a good or a bad thing. Everything is a trade-off. And so, yeah, that's just interesting. That is just very, very interesting. So, to the alcohol, just a little bit more, because I actually wanted to go into that just a little bit deeper. When it comes to the alcohol consumption, like, we numb ourselves to basically our higher order thinking in order to then do what? To live, right? Like, you are inhibiting your inhibitions with alcohol, right? And that is also interesting that we do this basically of our own accord, right? Now, of course, there's like, I think it's like 5 to 10% who are prone to like alcoholism, where alcohol just releases an incredible amount of dopamine, where you're just gonna get like addicted. So that's obviously not necessarily the route you want to go down to. But let's say if you are not prone to that, and you're just, you drink when there's a party or something like that, it's strange. It's interesting, right? Because maybe this then again goes down to another daily app. Listen, I'm always going to refer back to other daily apps, because it's like, sometimes in these 10 minutes, I get thought patterns, and I talk about one thing, and then it turns into 2, and then it turns into 8, and then it turns into like 64. It's absolutely ridiculous. But so maybe what happens is that the weirdness of one's soul, let's say, comes out of, like, you come out of your shell. That's also something that people say. When alcohol is involved, because the higher level of processing stops filtering every single damn thing that you might want to talk about, that you're like, oh, the other person's gonna find this weird, I'm not gonna talk about this. And yet at the same time, the person like standing or sitting in front of you is like, bro, just talk about something interesting. Or, oh, should I bring this up? No, the guy probably doesn't want to talk about that. And yet you're like sitting there wanting to talk about the same damn thing, right? Maybe not, but maybe you do want to do that. So I just think that sometimes maybe you should push for that even without alcohol, right? So if you can, this might be an interesting practical thing to test, okay? So when your next sort of party is, at the very beginning, if you have been drunk before, and if you'll be drunk again, obviously stay safe. I mean, I think I need to mention it, but I will mention it anyway. Never drink and drive. That should be a given. And also, obviously, depending on the laws of your country, stay within the legal limit, basically, like when you're allowed to drink or not. Now, if you have been drunk before, you roughly know the state of mind on your consciousness will occupy. Now, try to get into that state of mind before you have drank your first bit of alcohol, and think, what would my drunk self say now? And then do the opposite. Once you are drunk, what will your sober self do? And see if you can still access the higher level order of thinking, even though you're actually already drunk. It would be an interesting experiment to do. With that, though, that's the Kaupenjoe Daily app today. Hope you like this and